Well, it's good to see everybody here this morning. We got a few visitors. We're thankful that you're here, and please give us a little bit of time to get to know you a little bit before you leave. If you would, open up your Bibles to Malachi chapter 1. Malachi chapter 1. On a basic outline of the lesson, you're going to have it right there in Malachi chapter 1. I want to, add an additional comment here. Reese is really tired, I can tell. And right now I'm an expert on tiredness, and so he's really tired. So we're giving him a break. And if we give him a break, you can give me a break too, right? I think that's the way that goes. So I wanted to talk for the next couple of weeks here on the do's and don'ts of worship. And so we're going to do part one today. We're going to look at the don'ts here of worship, but I want to go ahead and clarify here because when discussing this with somebody, they said, "Are you going to? Why are you doing the don'ts first?" And I said, "Well, I want to end on a good note, so I do the do's next week, and we'll have a good note to end on. I want to talk about the don'ts this week." Because we do need to understand that. We do need to understand that there are things that we should not do, and there's a lot of things mentioned here. This is not an exhaustive list. This is really just looking at Malachi chapter 1 and seeing what was going on there. So let's look at a couple of things here, and we'll start here in verse 1, give us a little bit of context, and get on into verses 6 and 7 to start us off. It says, "The burden of the word of Jehovah to Israel by Malachi, I have loved you, saith Jehovah. Yet ye say, Wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, saith Jehovah? Yet I loved Jacob. But Esau I hated, and made his mountains a desolation, and gave his heritage to the jackals of the wilderness. Whereas Edom saith, We are beaten down, but we will return and build the waste places. Thus saith Jehovah of hosts, They shall build, but I will throw down, and men shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom Jehovah hath indignation forever. And your eyes shall see, and ye shall say, Jehovah be magnified beyond the border of Israel." And so, as we're getting started here, this is setting the tone immediately, and we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but the tone here is pretty understandable right from the get-go. But look at verse 1. When you look at verse 1, it says, "The burden of the word of Jehovah to Israel." Now, here is a key here to understanding what's going on. This is going to be a burden to them because they are not doing right. If you're doing the right thing, then when someone tells you this is the right thing to do, is that a burden? No, you go, well, I'm already doing that. I'm already doing all those things. But if you're doing all of the wrong things, and then you are taught the right thing to do, it is a burden. I know that to be a fact just from preaching. When you preach long enough, it doesn't really have to take you that long to kind of figure this one out. But I remember in the too distant past, I was working with a congregation. They asked me to come over, and I looked at the work, and I decided I'd move there. And they told me specifically, they said, "You know what, we like your name and who it's associated with." There's some sound brethren that I'd spoken on lectureships with. When they Googled my name, they saw I was in lectureships with some other brethren that they really respected. And so they said, we want you to come. We know that you're going to teach the truth, and so please come and teach the truth. And I came and I started teaching the truth. And they didn't really say this, but this is kind of how they acted. They said, "We want you to come and teach the truth." And as soon as I started doing it, they said, No, whoa, not that much truth. We like the truth, but we don't want to hear all of that. We want to hear a little bit of it. We want you to make us feel good, but we don't want to hear all of it. But really, honestly, we need to hear all of it, right? It does us no good to only hear a portion that makes us feel good, something we're already getting down right, and then to hear something, just that we already agree with. We need to hear the whole counsel of God. Now, let's talk about some things that they were not getting right. The first thing is this, they were despising God's name. So this is the first don't. Don't despise God's name. Look at verses 6 and 7 with me. It says, "A son honoreth his father, and a servant his master. If then I am a father, where is mine honor? And if I am a master, where is my fear? Saith Jehovah of hosts unto you, O priests that despise my name." Now, let's just stop right there. Just kind of giving some context here. When you think about these times, and when you're looking at Malachi, this is really not too far removed from the first century. It's only by, I guess, about 400 to 700 years, depending. But not a big gap here between this and the life of Christ. And so a lot of the traditions that they have are already set in stone. And that being, one of those being, that the father is such a prominent place in the home, especially in Jewish tradition. And so the father was to be honored. You honor your father, knowing that's what's going to happen in the end. Well, if you're a son and you've got a father, your father is going to give you an inheritance someday. And so you need to honor your father, So honor your father. And it says, so a son honoreth his father, and a servant his master. If then I am your father, where is mine honor? And if I am a master, where is my fear? Saith Jehovah of hosts. So priests that despise my name, and ye say, wherein have we despised thy name? Ye offer polluted bread upon mine altar, and ye say, wherein have we polluted thee? And that ye say, the table of Jehovah is contemptible. We'll leave this verse up here for as long as we can. And look at this with me. So the priests are the first ones called out here. They're going to be called out. It says they have despised the name of God. And of course they go, well, how are you doing that? Well, they're saying, look, all these things. It is disgusting to serve the Lord. It is contemptible. The table of Jehovah is contemptible. When we think about this in kind of modern day terms and thinking about preachers, and I know a lot of preachers, and I have conversations with many of them throughout the week, and I enjoy that aspect. I love it. I love talking shop, if you will. But every now and then you get a little bit of a discouragement when talking to some preachers. And recently, someone that I know, I've known really well, has quit preaching. They just quit preaching. And they got some discouragement. And so when I was told about it, I was told by another person. And I think people would be kind of shocked at my response. My response was not, oh, well, that's not good. You know what my response was? My response was, well, good. Now, people go, whoa. Someone has quit preaching and you said good? Well, yeah, I think that is good. It is good. If you can, I was told this so many times, if you can do anything other than preach, then do it. Go do that. Don't preach. You need to feel differently about preaching. And so if you can do anything other than preach, then go do it. A preacher needs to feel so enthralled with what he's doing that he would rather die than not preach again. That's the way that I feel. That's the way I know many preachers feel. If you don't feel that way, then you shouldn't be preaching. These priests have not simply, they're not. They just don't have a heart of service here. They despise the name of God because they don't want to serve God. This is kind of the mindset. Oh, this is dumb. The table of the Lord, being in service to God is awful. That's the mindset. Well, how do people do this today? And I want you to remember this. Now, I've talked about preachers and I've talked about, some things associated with preaching. But remember this. This is to the priests. And the priests have done these things. And if you recall, in 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 9, it says, but ye are an elect race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, that ye may show forth the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. And so, brethren, we are a royal priesthood. And so let's think about how in the world we might be subject to some of the things that are being said today. Sometimes people will say this phrase, and I understand that, I don't put too much emphasis on this sometimes because I think there are different ways that you can say this. But have you ever heard someone say, I have to go to church? Oh, I got to go to church. I got to do that. Well, more like it's an obligation. That's the way that that's being said. Now, I say that sometimes, but I don't mean it that way. What I mean is, man, I've got to. I've got to. I can't do anything but that. And if you mean that, that's good. If you mean, well, it's an obligation that I have to do, I have to go, well, that's not good. That's not good at all. That kind of shows that it's just a burden, a complete burden. You can see it in these people's attitude. You can see it. They don't really come to worship God. They come to just kind of check off their list of things that they know that they should do. But you know what? You don't want to do it. I like this time of year for a very specific reason. I like being outside. I do. But when I think about being outside, I like being outside doing something fun. What I don't like doing is being outside and push mowing my lawn. I don't like doing that. I love this time of year because I don't have to do that. And I've got a big backyard, and that thing is not always fun to mow. And then, you have to take care of all those things. Look, I don't like doing that sometimes. And sometimes, you know what, we'll be doing something and I'll have to tell Autumn, I go, listen, I have got to mow the lawn. I've got to. The Homeowners Association is going to be calling soon. If I don't get out there, I've got to do something with that thing. I don't want to do it. I've got other things. You know what I'd rather be doing? I'd rather be doing anything else at that moment. But when it's time, you go, listen, I've got to go out there and do that. It's a burden. It needs to be done, but it's a burden. Some people treat the Lord like he is a burden. And that's what these people do. All right, let's look at the next one. Don't act like it doesn't matter. That's what we need to remember when it comes to worship. You don't act like worship doesn't matter. Look at verse 8 with me. Malachi 1 and verse 8, and when you offer the blind for sacrifice, it is no evil. And when you offer the lame and sick, it is no evil. Present it now unto thy governor. Will he be pleased with thee, or will he accept thy person, saith Jehovah of hosts? And so he keeps this thing going. The prophet here keeps speaking and says, oh, okay, well, this is what you do. You are offering the blind for a sacrifice. And you go, that's not evil. That's not evil. It's fine. It's okay. You offer the lame and the sick. Oh, that's fine. And so then the prophet says this. Go ahead and present that to your governor and see how that goes over. Now, they're offering the blind for a sacrifice. They're offering the lame and the sick. And so here's the question that is being asked. And this is the same question we could ask ourselves. Would you do this for a political leader? If the governor of Oklahoma was coming to your house, what do you think you would do? What would you do? Would you just go, listen, it is what it is, guys. This is how we live around here. We got dishes in the sink. We got things going on. I don't care. I highly doubt that. I think the average person is going to do what? If the governor of Oklahoma is going to come to their house, you know what? I'll just tell you what I would do. Listen, we live in our home. I know you guys live in your home. If you have kids, you live in your home. You got stuff everywhere. And there's toys, and there's clothes that are stuffed in places you didn't even know existed in your home because your child has put it there. And you know what we do? In our home, we'd be like, oh, you know what? We got some important company coming over, and you know what? we're gonna clean this place top to bottom. And someone might say, well, they're not going to look in your closet. Well, I don't know that. I mean, yeah, I'm going to make sure. We'll make sure. You know what? I'm like, hey, look, Timothy, this is your job right now. I need you to clean the baseboards. Everybody, we got a spot on the carpet. Let's make sure we get that up. We want this thing looking nice, You know what? I got some projects I've got going on at the house. I need to get those fixed because, you know what? I want this place looking nice. I want it looking nice. This is important, right? Not every day do you get the governor to come over to your house, right? It's important. And so you do everything that you could to please him. But what about God? And that's the point that's being made here. What are you doing for God? They're offering the lame and the sick and the blind, but you wouldn't do that for anybody else. But you're doing that for Jehovah God. Now, we should be putting our best foot forward when it comes to worship. I think about this a lot, and not to kind of, take away from other things that we might talk about next week when we talk about the dues. But, think about this. How are we going to prepare ourselves when we come to worship? Listen, I know things happen, and sometimes crazy stuff happens. And sometimes you just lose track of stuff. And, I'll be the first to admit, there have been times where I've gotten up on a Sunday morning and I go, oh, man, I don't have a clean dress shirt. And so you know what I do immediately? That's the first thing I do. I throw that thing in the wash and I get it all washed and dried so that I've got something to wear. Usually I do that way ahead of time, but there's been times where the week has gotten away and you go, I thought I had everything down. No. You need to be prepared. I know things happen. I know it. It can happen too with just something as simple as sleep. I'm a firm believer in that we need to try to get to bed earlier. And look, sometimes it doesn't work out for us. It didn't work out for me last night that much. But, listen. Do what you got to do, right? You do what you got, but you're going to put your best foot forward. You're going to do everything that you can to be prepared. When you come and you're here to praise God, what do? Do you sit there like a bump on a log, or do you participate? Put your best foot forward for the Lord. All right. Next. Don't worship in vain. Now, I know we go to the New Testament a lot for this. We don't even have to go that far to find it because it's right here in this passage. Look at Malachi 1, verses 9 and 10. It says, and now I pray you, entreat the favor of God, that he may be gracious unto us. This hath been by your means. Will he accept any of your persons? Saith Jehovah of hosts, oh, that there were one among you that would shut the doors, that ye might not kindle fire on mine altar in vain. I have no pleasure in you, saith Jehovah of hosts, neither will I accept an offering at your hand. The prophet tells them that, basically they are infuriating to the Lord. So much, in fact, that Jehovah says, I have no pleasure. I have no pleasure in you, neither will I accept a sacrifice from your hand. Nothing is going to work. When you look at the idea of worship, and there is a good correlation in the Old Testament to what they had to do with sacrifice and the burning of incense and things like that. He said, look, your worship is not acceptable to me. You think that you can live this way, you're living so infuriatingly to me, and then you can just worship God and be just fine. That is not the way this works. Unfortunately, I've been a part of several congregations, whether I was preaching or just attending, where there were people that I knew that did not take the Lord's Supper. I know I've said stuff about this before, but they wouldn't take the Lord's Supper. And I remember asking one time, one person in particular, I've said this a few times, but this one guy, really stands out in my mind. It was in Selma, Alabama. I was a youth minister at the time. And I said, question, I thought maybe this guy wasn't a Christian. He was just coming in and sitting in the back. I just didn't know. And so I said, I got a question. Why don't you partake of the Lord's Supper. And he said, well, I just don't feel worthy to do it. And I'm like, well, it's a command. You should be doing it. And if you don't feel worthy to be doing it, it sounds like you're doing something you shouldn't. And you should be working on that through the week and not punishing God on Sundays. Brethren, we just have to follow the commands of God and let that be it. Many think that as long as they are offering something, just something, when it comes to worship, then that should be fine. But we see right here from this passage, it is not okay. It is not okay. These people are offering sacrifices. God is rejecting it. And so here's the question for us. Are we offering what God is asking of us? John 4 and verse 24, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship in spirit and truth. Now, we're going to talk about this more next week, but we have to worship God with the right attitude and do it the right way for his sake. All right, next. Don't profane God's name. Now, I know that when you think of profane, maybe you think profanity, Maybe when you think profane, you kind of associate that with vain, and we're not talking about the same thing here. We're talking about something completely different. There is something, speaking the Lord's name in vain means to make it empty, to make it worthless. This is different from that. Look at Malachi 1, verses 11 and 12 with me. For from the rising of the sun even unto the going down of the same, my name shall be great among the Gentiles, and in every place incense shall be offered unto my name, and a pure offering. For my name shall be great among the Gentiles, saith Jehovah of hosts. But ye profane it, and that ye say, the table of Jehovah is polluted, and the fruit thereof, even its food, is contemptible. And so this is an echo from the priests from before. What does it mean when something is profane? Well, the word profane means to desecrate. That is exactly why it is called profanity. You can take a word and you can make it profane. There are words, and I'm not going to make any sort of specific illustration here, but there are words that in the United States, they are curse words. If you go over to other countries, specifically, I'm thinking in Africa and different parts of Africa, they use some of those terms daily, but it's not profane. It is profane here. It's not profane there. Now, why? We have made it profane. We have desecrated the word. We have turned it into something else. We've made it a curse word. We can do that. That's what we do. I could illustrate some other things here, but there are words that I did not realize this. I'm not a big Harry Potter fan, but I want to say that. I'm not a Harry Potter fan. I don't care. I've not read the books. I think I've seen the movies. But they say words in there that it's a lower rating here than it is over in England, because they have some words in there that are actually some pretty explicit words in their culture that we don't even think about once here. And if I were to describe what being profane really is, in Hebrews, chapter 11, we see that the idea of Esau being profane. And what was he profane about? He sold his birthright for a little bit of stew, for a meal. He did not understand the seriousness of a serious situation. That is profane. When we come to worship God, that is a serious situation. And if we do not approach it seriously, then we are being profane. This is really a key here Everything they're talking about here, they look at worshiping God as being disgusting. Everything about the Lord is disgusting. Serving only because they have to, not because they want to. And that is the key to all of this, is you're not going to come to worship God and have profane worship if you love God. Because you're going to want to do what's right. And you're going to have that right attitude as you do it. We worship God because we want to, because we love God. If you're coming to worship out of obligation, you need to repent. You need to make things right with the Lord. Your service is in vain. Make it right. Your worship is profane. Don't profane His holy name by your unrighteous actions. Just don't do it. Don't profane the name of the Lord by worshiping profanely. All right. Number next. And this is last but certainly not least. Don't find worship wearisome. Look at the last couple of verses here. Verses 13 and 14. Ye say also, Behold, what a weariness it is. And ye have snuffed at it, saith Jehovah of hosts, and ye have brought that which was taken by violence, to the lame and the sick. Thus ye bring the offering. Should I accept this at your hand, saith Jehovah? But cursed be the deceiver, who hath in the flock a male, and voweth and sacrificeth unto the Lord a blemished thing. For I am a great king, saith Jehovah of hosts, and my name is terrible among the Gentiles. So when it comes to worshiping God, are you dragging yourself out of bed each Lord's Day, regretting your decision to become a Christian? I hope you heard me on that one. So many people treat coming to worship like it's the worst thing ever. They will find any other excuse in the world to go and do anything else than come and worship God, then come to Bible class. They just won't do it. It's kind of like, listen, I think people probably haven't been raised right. Because I can tell you this, I hope that your parents taught you this. This is what we try to teach our children. And that is, if you tell somebody yes, and you get a better offer, you don't accept that offer. You already told someone yes. Now, let me illustrate that for you. If you got to, let's just say you got to go out, like one of the brethren here said, hey, you know what? I'd like to go out to dinner with you. And then, I don't know, your favorite celebrity walks through the doors and says, you know what? I want to go to dinner with you. But you've already said yes to your friend, to your brother in Christ. I don't care if they are going to understand or not, okay? You get a better offer, and you are disrespecting that person that you are denying. You should never do that, but people do that all the time to the Lord. I'll come to worship as long as it's not opening day of hunting season or fishing. I'll come and worship God as long as it doesn't interfere with vacation. I'll come and worship God as long as the game's not on during that time. All kinds of excuses, right? But what you're doing is you're saying, you know what? I'm only going to come and serve God if it's convenient for me. But if I want to do something else, then so be it. Oh, what a wearisome thing it is to serve God. What a wearisome thing it is. When it comes to worshiping God, we should not be dragging ourselves out of bed. We should be looking forward to coming and worshiping God. This is mentioned to the people. Look at their worship. Their worship is not good. Their worship is just the leftovers here for God. And so they're giving God the leftovers. They're not giving God their best. They're saying, oh, we're going to serve God, but here they go. Listen, I've seen this so many times. Like, I don't want to go to Bible class. That Bible class teacher, I don't want to go. Song leader, we didn't have that this morning, Hunter. Don't worry. But the preacher, don't want to go and listen. He's going to drone on and on. They're going to take forever doing everything. Oh, what a wearisome thing it is to serve God. That's what some people think. That's what's the way some people feel. Now, maybe people don't do that all the time, we kind of do. Maybe we feel that way and we don't express it in that way. But let me show you what it looks like. And what does it look like? It looks like this. When songs are sung, they don't sing. Or maybe they don't sing the way that they could. Maybe they don't have any energy in their singing. When prayers are said, they don't bow their heads in prayer. When the Lord's Supper is being passed around, they're doing anything but thinking about the Lord's death. When preaching is going on, they sit there and they barely listen. It's kind of interesting I say that. If there's anybody like that here this morning, they probably didn't even hear that. When it comes to giving, they don't give their means. They just give the leftovers. Don't give the leftovers to God. Don't look at worship as being wearisome. But you know what? I don't want to spoil next week, okay? We got the dues of worship for next week, and please come and listen to that. But what you need to know right now is this. If you have not yet become a child of God, we'd love to help you out with that, to hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized. We'd love to study with you on those things. If you have already done that, but you have not been living faithfully, you need to live faithfully. Revelation 2 and verse 10, be thou faithful unto death, and thou shalt receive a crown of life. And so if you are here this morning, you need the invitation. It is yours. Please come as we stand and as we sing.